He was appointed, tasked with accusation, death, and judgment already decided. He carried out his work with full authority and complete loyalty. Every charge he delivered was sanctioned. He became the one who spoke what heaven wouldn't say aloud. He took on the work that kept holiness clean by pushing its weight elsewhere. Over time, that burden marked him. His service placed him too close to suffering, too close to judgment, and too close to what heaven preferred to keep unseen. Eventually, he stood apart, no longer welcome among those untouched by his work. Samael appears gradually on the edges of Jewish writing, in the places where questions about judgment, suffering, and responsibility start to pile up. He surfaces later in Jewish writings, especially in rabbinic discussions and mystical texts that try to explain how divine judgment actually works behind the scenes. These texts are wrestling with uncomfortable problems, and Samael appears where those problems refuse to go away. From the beginning, his name carries heaviness. Samael is commonly translated as poison of God or severity of God. Both readings point to the same idea. He's linked to harm that is allowed, even required. Harm that serves a purpose. Early descriptions place him among angels operating with authority, when he actually does so because he's been given permission. There's no suggestion that he sneaks into his role or takes it upon himself. He is sent. What stands out immediately is that Samael is never gentle. While other angels protect and heal or guide, Samael confronts. His presence signals that something has already gone wrong and that consequences are now unavoidable. In these early writings, he's often positioned opposite humanity, challenging people rather than helping them. He presses weaknesses instead of covering them. He brings attention to failure where others would prefer to look away. It makes him useful. As Jewish thought develops, angels begin to take on clearer roles. Some are associated with mercy, some with protection, and some with healing or guidance. Samael's role sharpens. He becomes more closely associated with accusation and harm and eventually death. Writers become more honest about what his role implies. Crucially, there isn't an early version of Samael that later becomes corrupted. He appears already burdened from the moment his name is used. He's tied to severity. This makes him difficult to place. He belongs among the angels, but his work makes people uncomfortable with that fact. From his earliest appearances, Samael forces writers to confront how judgment is carried out, who bears the name for suffering, and whether divine authority can remain untouched when its agents aren't. That tension is there from the start. Everything that follows grows out of this unease. There's no room for error. Every action is recorded and every consequence is earned. That level of accountability is what separates a lucky guess from a professional strategy. If you're looking to bring that kind of discipline to your own execution, you need the right environment to do it. That's why I've partnered with Playbit for today's video. Playbit is a leading trading community with over 1,000 members run by professional traders. Inside, you'll find in-depth education that actually explains how the markets move: structure, price, delivery, liquidity, execution. They cover the fundamentals, advanced strategy, risk management, and prop firm readiness, all the tools needed to build wealth. Monday to Friday, there's live trading, real traders, real results, wins and losses, full transparency. You watch the sessions live, ask questions, see setups forming, understand the logic, and if you want, follow along. Earn while you learn. You may assume you need thousands to get started. That's where the prop firms come in. They let you trade with their capital rather than your own, in exchange for a share of the profits. But passing their evaluations takes discipline and precision. With Playbit's help, you can get funded and start trading serious capital while keeping your own money safe. They break down the rules, show you how to avoid common traps, and teach you how to trade the way prop firms actually want to see. Still not convinced? Go check out the Walls of Gains, a live feed of member results. Funded passes, withdrawals, consistent trades, daily results from members like this, 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 and this. This isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It takes time and real commitment. But this could be a start to financial freedom. You can try Playbit completely free for 7 days, no commitment, no excuses, just you, the charts, and a community built to win. Nothing to lose, and everything to gain. Click the link in the description. In Jewish tradition, judgment begins with a charge. Before anything can be taken or broken, a voice must speak. And that voice belongs to Samael. When he speaks, a process begins that cannot be reversed. The book of Job offers one of the clearest examples of this. The scene unfolds in heaven among the Bene Ha-Elohim, the sons of God. Among them is Ha-Satan, the accuser, a title, not an identity. God points to Job and declares him blameless, but the accuser asks a single question. Does Job fear God for nothing? That question changes everything. It challenges the legitimacy of divine favor. Because of that question, a test is authorized. Job's protection is withdrawn, his wealth collapses, his children are killed, and his health fails. His friends turn on him because a single voice removed the comfort of assumption. Once the charge was spoken, the silence broke, and the sentence had somewhere to go. That is what Samael does. He brings forward the claim that changes the atmosphere. The moment he speaks, innocence is no longer assumed. Guilt becomes traceable. The room becomes a courtroom, and everything soft begins to harden. He is feared because he removes ambiguity. In religious life, ambiguity is comfort. As long as fault remains unnamed, it can be softened or excused. But once the charge is spoken, once it is clear and exact, that comfort disappears. In later mysticism, Samael becomes associated with the Sitra Akra, the other side, the realm of harsh severity. But even there, he remains within the structure. He evaluates. When the mass becomes too much to bear in silence, he names it. It is accuracy that makes him terrifying. His speech is cold, measured, and correct. He doesn't embellish or exaggerate, he doesn't need to. His authority lies in truth stated clearly. In some traditions, Samael appears at the moment of death as the one who reads the record. He's the voice that speaks when nothing else can be said. Whether he whispers or declares it loudly, the charge lands with finality. In every life there are things we hope remain hidden, even from heaven. Samael is the one who finds them and brings them to the surface. This is what he was appointed to do. Verdicts begin with clarity, and he is the one who carries it. Samael's presence is often felt in his stillness. He possesses a way of simply remaining in place, quiet, watchful, and entirely unmoving. You realize very quickly that everything stops where he begins. This is the side of him that defines the boundary. His shadow becomes the gap between where you are and where you want to be, and that no, the sheer, immovable reality of his position, is what we eventually fear as force against us. In the old stories, angels are given specific parts of the world to look after. Some bring life or offer a hand. Samael is different. He's placed exactly where mercy reaches its limit. There's a famous story about Abraham on his way to sacrifice his son. It's a heavy, silent journey, and Samael shows up. But he remains apart from the argument. Instead, he becomes a deep, rushing river right in the middle of the path. He challenges the man to keep walking. He's there to see exactly what the mission is worth to the one carrying it out. Abraham pushes through, but the pattern is set. When your heart is being tested, Samael is the one you must face. When someone stands in your way with that much conviction, you eventually stop seeing the command and start seeing an enemy. It feels personal. The world feels small because he is the only thing in the room that won't budge. The truth is that he is acting out of pure loyalty. He's the only one who's actually honoring the original world, doing exactly what he was told to do. The pain we feel is simply what happens when a limit is reached. He ensures the end of the line remains the end. But because he is so steady, and because he never blinks, he becomes the image of suffering. Eventually we stop seeing a servant and start seeing a monster. We believe that he's the reason the path is blocked, even though he was only ever told to watch the door. And he does. Samael avoids the flashy destruction. He leaves the fire and the crumbling walls to others. His role is much quieter, much heavier. In the later stories, his name begins to surface right at the edge of ruin. He is there moments before kingdoms fracture, before cities fall, and before the protection people counted on suddenly vanishes. At first it looks like a coincidence. Then it feels like a warning. Eventually, it becomes a certainty. You realize that he can bring about a ruin without ever raising a hand. And once he does, the very idea of recovery starts to feel impossible. In deeper mystical writings, he is the last figure ever to be seen before a life or structure gives way. When he enters a picture, the script is nearly finished. The sentence has already been written. He's simply the one who reads the final word aloud. There is an old pattern in these texts where Samael appears during the most decisive turns in history, moments when people are teetering between a second chance and total collapse. You can see this in the story of Exodus during the final plague. The ancient texts speak of a destroyer sent to carry out the last judgment. The blood on the doorpost was a boundary line, a warning to that specific shadow, do not enter here. While the Torah leaves this figure unnamed, many later traditions identify this destroyer as Samael. They see him as the one who must be held back, because his entry means the line has already been crossed. That image of a figure so heavy it must be restrained is what defines him. He appears when judgment is no longer a threat, but a reality. He arrives at the exact moment when it's too late for change. In the Zohar, Samael belongs to the left-hand side of the divine, the side of severity and hard truths. When that side outweighs mercy, collapse follows. He doesn't need to push the scale, he simply appears when it's already tipped. This is the recurring theme. The soul at the final breath, the kingdom at the brink of ruin, the person who has crossed one threshold too many. He arrives to witness the turning point, and that is what makes his arrival so haunting. It's the timing. His name works like a siren. It's quiet, but it's final. It says, the test is over. The window has collapsed. What follows is now consequence. Even those who believe in miracles know that there is a moment when the line is no longer theoretical. Samael is the one who marks it. He can leave the weapons behind. Samael possesses a perfect kind of loyalty. He was given the hardest assignments and fulfilled them with absolute precision. Every charge he spoke, every gate he guarded, it was all done under authority, yet he remains on the outside, existing in a state of being unwelcome. This is because obedience, when taken to its furthest edge, becomes something no one wants to look at. In the stories of the heavenly, there are those who return and are restored to honor, but Samael remains where the work ended. Over time, the figure who once stood in the light of holiness begins to be seen differently. He becomes a shadow that carries the scent of the end. There is a difference between those who speak of hard truth and those who have to enforce it. Samael made the consequences real. He followed every warning through to its conclusion. While others moved freely through the heights, he found the doors slowly closing behind him. He became avoided. That is the burden of service when the command is clean but the work is heavy. His proximity to suffering began to define him. He was the one who stayed in the room after every plea had failed, every defense had crumbled. That kind of presence becomes too much for those who want the sentence executed, but don't want to remember the cost. In the deeper mystical text, he begins to absorb blame for the very things he was told to do. His name starts to blur with the idea of the enemy. The memory of his work, done on behalf of a power that remains distant, clings to him like a shadow. He is still faithful, but that faithful now makes him dangerous to be around. His existence is a paradox. To be the one who enforces the end means living in the wreckage of what fell. Others serve once and return to grace. Samael serves continually without relief. He is the reminder that judgment has a price. He is the one who occupies the space where mercy is not extended, and once you have stood in that place long enough, it begins to shape how you are seen. Others can feel it. His arrival is no longer tolerable to them. Eventually, Samael becomes the one who isn't invited back. Those he served no longer want to see what their own orders look like once they are fully obeyed. His exile is the result of a service rendered too completely. He is the figure who did everything asked of him and was left outside the gate. He remains unclaimed. He never changed sides, but over time people stopped believing that could be true. The further history moved from judgment, the more unbearable Samael became. He carried out what others commanded, and that only made him more dangerous in their eyes. The fact that he followed orders without rebellion, that he enforced suffering without protest, meant there was no rebellion to punish and no crime to explain him. That made him harder to contain. Writers then tried to contain him another way. They began to move him, first away from the heights, then toward the shadows. His proximity to heaven became too uncomfortable. So the stories shifted. He was paired with Lilith, the first wife of Adam, cast as a seducer, corrupter, and figure of poison and temptation. Where once he was an enforcer of holiness, now he was made into the author of sin. The work he did was reinterpreted as motive. This was a psychological recoil, a way of coping with the memory of a servant who followed commands so completely that the results became indistinguishable from cruelty. Judgment could remain necessary, but the one who carried it out had to be thrown into the pit. That's how demonization works. The label becomes a mask that keeps the real story out of view. In later Kabbalistic texts, Samael is repositioned again. He's no longer just heaven's servant, he's now the prince of demons, the consort of Lilith, the arch-adversary aligned with the other side. His story is dismantled piece by piece. The records of his authority are blurred, and the weight of what he did is turned into a personal hunger. The horror of what he was asked to do is replaced by the comfort of imagining he chose it for himself. But even in these darker portrayals, traces remain. He's still organized, still precise, still executing decisions that don't begin with him. Even in hell, he watches, he waits, he obeys. The shape is still there, just buried beneath layers of accusation that were never part of the original design. This is what history does when it doesn't know where to place fear. It holds it up, reshapes it, and files it under evil. Doing this, calling it evil, makes it easier to move on. Samael isn't reclassified because he changed. He's reclassified because he didn't. Samael stayed in line. He spoke only when required, doing the same work over and over, long after everyone stopped watching, and that's the horror. When you picture a fallen being, you expect defiance, you expect a war in heaven, a throne overturned, but Samael served completely. He did the task everyone else avoided. The executions, the accusations, the moments that closed history rather than opened it. And when it was done, there was a silence. Just distance. A quiet, uneasy withdrawal from the place that had sent him. He's a theological embarrassment. When you look too closely at him, you start to ask questions about obedience, about how far holiness is willing to go, about what gets discarded once the judgment is carried out. Samael's horror is that he stayed true to heaven. It's that heaven turned from him, and he's still there, still watching to be recalled, still listening for a command. His stance is one of continuation. He is the angel who followed the letter of the command until the command itself became unbearable to witness. So we flinch. We flinch because he didn't break, because he did everything right and was still left outside. Heaven has room for martyrs, for prophets, for rebels who fall and rise again. But it seems the limit is reached with one who did the job no one else would and never stopped doing it. And that's where he stays, apart from redemption, just waiting, forever obedient, forever outside.